Are you confused about writing? Do you not know where to start or even how to finish? Do you love writing so much that it burns deep in your soul, but you still don't know how to meet your goals? Are you looking for a little inspiration that will take you on a writer's vacation? Then let us all write together. Let us all write our way. Hello, my friends. Welcome to Write Our Way. I'm your host, Patrick Starks, and today we're going to talk about how we can make our writing a little bit more poetical. Well, the first way to learn how to make your writing more poetical is by studying poetry. The first thing is we got to understand what poetry is, and I assure you that poetry is not just making rhymes. It is so much more than that. Trust me, don't get me wrong, I love rhymes. I am a wordsmith, so I love it when we can come up with a whole bunch of words or have this huge vocabulary of words and somehow miraculously make them go together. Now, I'm not saying that you can't do this in your stories. I mean, look at the children's books, right? Like Dr. Seuss and whatnot. And I'd say for the most part, if you're going to see any type of rhymes, like on a consistency, that's most likely going to be in children's books for sure. In other words, they also call it nursery rhymes, if you will. But yeah, let's go back to the books, or your short story or anything you're trying to write that's a story. Let's go back to that and let's think about what the meaning is behind making your writing poetical. I mean, basically what we're talking about here is making your words sound a little bit more juicy instead of so straight to the point. You know, if you're going to say something like, "Oh, she cried," you know, that's not really appealing. That's probably good when you put that after a dialogue, and it's not bad after a while, but at some point it gets a little old, and we want to convey a strong emotion, right, when we're telling our stories. And so the best way to convey this strong emotion is by being a little over-exaggerative when we explain a certain scene that's happening in the story. Instead of saying she cried, let's say something like her tears fell down the side of her face like rain to window glass. You see the difference there? And so the difference is we're putting an image in our reader's head. And so what's happening is they're actually thinking about the last time they saw rain fall on a window. And they're thinking about how that would look on the girl's face. And so now it doesn't look so straightforward as she cried, because that's very broad, right? It sounds like she could just be a little sniffle, a tear or two tears here. But to window glass, it's like she's bawling. She's really, really sad about something. And again, you just can't say that straightforward. I mean, you could, but again, it's just not as appealing to your reader when you say it the other way. If we just said, "Oh, she's bawling out her tears," that's something you would say maybe in a real life conversation. But for a book or a story or short story, or again, whatever type of writing you're doing for your story, you definitely want to convey this type of exaggeration to give a strong emotion that visually inputs something in our readers' heads. And so in short, by doing this, we are therefore making our story more poetical. But again, my friends, in order to know this, you've had to read some poetry. So you definitely need to go out and read poetry, read some Maya Angelou. And just going back to what I said before, you know, again, these words that you're trying to give to your reader to have a better image visually of what's going on, they don't need to rhyme, because you just saw it yourself, you just heard it yourself. I didn't rhyme at all to that. I could, but I didn't, because it was not necessary for me to rhyme. Now you can go ahead and Google the definition of poetry if you like, but I didn't bother doing this, and I didn't want to read this to you guys because I wanted to go with a definition based off what I've read and how I feel. And poetry to me, honestly, is like the first form of like CG or something like that. I know I'm being over exaggerative again, but that's how I feel about it, because poetry is all about expression. It's about visually putting something in your viewer or reader's head to get a sense of what the scene might look like, because not like today, they didn't have that type of stuff back then to actually show us exactly what's going on. Now we have all this technology and CG again that can show exactly what we see in our own heads, what we would like others to see. And so to do that, people like Shakespeare himself had to be very exaggerative about what they wanted us to see. And this doesn't just go for poetry, this goes for all forms of art. From Michelangelo to Leonardo da Vinci, we look at all their creations, they're all very exaggerative. But I think that's the beauty to it, guys, you know? Just think about that. The exaggeration. We all have that in life, right? Life is very exaggerative. We tend to over-exaggerate on certain situations in our life that aren't really all that big of a deal. You know, not to school anybody on this, but I'm just speaking from what I've learned down the road, growing it up into my 30s. I just thought about that on the fly, just how beautiful that is, because every form of art we do is related in some sense to life. It's very close to reality. It's like how people, when they read fiction, they're like, oh, well, fiction's all fake and stuff. It's like, not necessarily. It really depends on the author, and usually most authors, their characters are going to be pretty close to somebody they know in real life, or pretty close to their own personas, because we all have more than one persona, right? So you might not see that in the author, but that might be another form of them that we just don't know, or another form of them yet that they're not willing to show. It's deep. It's very deep, guys. But this is what I love about writing so much, and the form of art, is because you can learn a lot about somebody, and you can learn a lot about just life in general when we dive deep into our stories. And that's why I do these episodes. This is why I talk with you guys about this, so you can get a deeper look into writing, because I know a lot of times when we're reading books, we just read it word for word. We're not actually thinking about the writer's intent. And I think as writers, we have to be kind of critiquers, even though it doesn't matter what level that author is. They could be really, really notable in the writing community. It does not matter. Still critique them and get a sense of their intent behind their words. What are they trying to give us? What are they trying to get us to see? Because there's always an Easter egg, as they would say, to the story. There's always something a little deeper that we're sometimes not willing to dive deep into or do the research for. But I assure you guys, this is not something that's boring. This is absolutely fun. It's like finding Waldo, right? It can be pretty fun. That game as a kid was so fun. It was harder than it looked, because there was always more than one Waldo, if I'm correct. Or I could be wrong. I could be fooled. I think there was some fake Waldos within those pictures, and you had to actually spot out the real Waldo, which was crazy. But that stuff was so iconic back in the day when I was younger. And it's like now, as I write, it's kind of the same scenario. It's versus writing or reading. I'm trying to find something. I'm trying to find something from the reader, or I'm trying to find something that I can deliver the audience within my story. And I think that's very deep. And especially when you're writing your own story, it's a lot of deep work sometimes. Stephen King has said a lot of times, like, he didn't have a dark life or anything like that for the stories that he's written. However, there is a darkness to him that he's not willing to say. I promise you that. There is something. He's a sweet guy, but there's something else that's deep that attracts him to that darkness of stories. And somewhere down there is something beautiful. Whatever it is, it's benefited him a lot, and it's a very creative side of him and a very strong expression form of him. And so when you do your writing, think about that. Like, don't be afraid to show that other form of you, because that strongest form of you is going to be what connects you to so many other people, and not just writers, but just everyday people in life, and I think that's really great. And just that alone is poetical, don't you think? But just going back to what I was saying about making your writing more poetical, a lot of people will say it's metaphors, and it is. That's another term for it, but I think calling it poetical is so much more honorable for the form of writing, for the form of storytellers, because what we do is very close to poetry, especially on the fiction side. Nonfiction, I'm not gonna. I honestly don't know, but it would be really cool to see a book that they have that does that. I would. If anybody has any recommendations, that'd be really great to hear from you all. But yeah, fiction is one of those things that's really close in comparison to poetry. It really is. Like, it's no joke. I mean, you have to have some form of it to make your story appealing, guys. And that's the honest truth. But that's what makes it fun, right? I would highly recommend you guys do this, because it's going to take away from your writing feeling, boring or just wearing you down. It's going to be a lot more fun when you start getting more clever about how you convey your images to your readers, or should I say your scenes to your readers. It's going to be a lot more fun, and you're going to appreciate your story so much more. But honestly, I'd say my final tip is don't go crazy on this, right? Again, this is not a children's book. If you're writing a short story, but if you're writing a children's short story, yeah, but it's not. If it's not related to children, if it's just straight up fiction, whether it be romance, horror, drama, whatever, science fiction, yeah, just pace yourself on using those expressions. Just really fine tune your story. Figure out what key points in the story you really want to do that. What key points in the dialogue you want to insert those in there. And like I said, just be really creative. It's like playing chess. I want to say there's no wrong or right move, but there are some wrong moves, and one of them is doing it too much. Because then people are going to start thinking, well, is this a children's book? What am I reading here? But then there's been times where it's like, it's a children's book. It acts like a children's book, but the content is very adult. So then people are either going to like it or not like it, because then it's like an insult to their intelligence, I would say, because it's like you're saying that they can only read on a child level, which, yeah, it doesn't work, especially if you're doing like a YA novel or just a full-blown adult novel. It just does not work. But I'm not opposed to it. I mean, I think if you're very creative and clever about it, you can pull it off. I have seen it before. I can't remember what stories that I read online, but they're very clever, and you can do it because it's still entertaining, right? Even to read a children's book. So if you can somewhat articulate that or insert that into a YA novel or an adult book, then that more power to you. I mean, that's amazing. That's crazy. That's BANANAA, that's bananas. But yeah, guys, let me quit rambling off. Again, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Again, really read some poetry. Poetry is very, very fun. There's a lot of great writers on Instagram that do poetry, and yeah, check them out. They're really great, and get some inspiration to maybe, write some poetry of your own. I think practicing poetry will as well help aid your, exaggeration in your stories. So definitely do that as well, But as always, guys, you know it. Always a pleasure speaking with you. Keep doing what you're doing. Love you all. Keep fighting a good fight. Keep writing. Again, stick to those deadlines. Don't forget. Last episode we talked about managing books, so stick to those deadlines. Keep writing. The more you chip away at your book, the faster you will get it finalized. The faster you can get that bad boy published. So we want to get that. We want to get our great stories out to our readers so they can enjoy it just as much as we have. So again, please stick to those deadlines. I know it's hard. Life gets busy. Life gets hard, but as long as we stick to the deadlines, nothing can get us down. All right, guys. Again, as always, come a child again. Imagine, my friends. And I'll see you guys soon.